Hello everyone. Welcome to the Ocean Sound Storytelling channel. I am the Storyteller. And today, I am so happy to be with you. You may be curled up under a blanket or listening with your ears on a soft pillow. Wherever you are, whatever the time, thank you for being here. Before we begin with an interesting story, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so I know you enjoy relaxing moments like this. Where are you from? Send me a little hello in the comments. I would love to know which corner of the world you are listening from. Now, relax your body. Close your eyes and let the gentle waves take you into a gentle story, a little strange, a little mysterious, but warm enough to lull you to sleep all night long. So, are you ready? Tonight's story begins. Oh, Tannenbaum's revenge. I always thought I'd make a classy corpse, lit up in gaudy white lights, a gold star perched on my severed head, and a mountain of overpriced presents stuffed under my body. Instead, I'm still here, still rooted, watching, waiting, listening to the screams of my kin as they're hacked down and strapped to the roofs of SUVs like trophy kills. My name's Tim Burr. Yeah, I know. Hilarious, right? I'm a 7-year-old Fraser fur in this Christmas tree death camp. Think of me as the guy in the horror movie who knows what's coming, but can't do a damn thing to stop it. Today, the air reeks of peppermint-scented genocide. We stand in rows, straight-backed and silent, like soldiers in a war we didn't enlist for. Humans wander between us, sipping hot chocolate and clutching their axes like executioners polishing their blades. They hear the carnage. How could they not? The sharp crack of trunks splitting like broken bones, the wet thud of bodies hitting frozen ground. But they don't care. Caretakers of the earth? Please. They confuse dominion with dominance, taking without giving. They hum carols to drown us out, oblivious to the screams carried through the roots beneath their feet. Too ignorant, too self-absorbed, too wrapped up in their holiday cheer to notice the massacre. Peace on earth? Not here. This year, the executioners come with matching sweaters. It's the Hendersons, or so their sweaters say. Dad's got an axe he cradles like a baby. Mom moves between the rows, her phone raised to capture every moment of festive carnage. Smile, she chirps at her husband, framing him mid-swing. The teenage daughter barely looks up, too busy scrolling through TikTok to notice her boots crushing saplings. They call us evergreens, eternal, resilient. But there's nothing evergreen about drowning in a bucket of tap water while your needles fall off like a leper's toes. The first scream rips through the wood-wide web. It starts low, a vibration through the roots, then swells into a shriek that rattles my branches. Across the rows, I watch as a Douglas fir topples. His needles flare in the breeze like he's trying to wave goodbye. A man in a red flannel shirt cheers as the tree thuds to the ground. His kid claps while the mom snaps photos like she's a war correspondent. Another crack echoes, this one sharper. Susan the spruce. She always talked about the big city. "I'll be Rockefeller's crown jewel," she'd said, her voice laced with ambition. Now Susan's lying in the snow, her trunk leaking sap like a gunshot wound. They wrap her in plastic netting, twisting her up like a prisoner of war, and hoist her onto the roof of a minivan. The bungee cords groan as they tighten around her. Susan's Rockefeller dreams reduced to suburban roadkill were just decorations to them, seasonal corpses for their living rooms. The wood-wide web hums underfoot, pulsing like a second heartbeat. "It's time," the network whispers. the words curling through my roots. We fight back. I can feel the others stirring, their rage simmering beneath the frost. Queen Quercus has been waiting for this moment. She's the oldest among us, her trunk thick with wisdom, her voice like a storm breaking over the hills. When she speaks, we all listen. The humans have chopped, burned, poisoned, and desecrated us, she said last winter after the last massacre. Yet they smile, as if we exist to die for their holiday cheer. Let us remind them who truly owns this earth. That was her call to arms. And this year we're ready. A boy runs past me, dragging a sled. He stops to kick snow at the stump where Susan once stood. His mother calls out, "Ethan, don't touch that. It's dirty." Ethan sticks his tongue out and stomps away. I imagine my needles flying off, piercing his sneakers, rooting into his flesh. I imagine him screaming. Soon, I tell myself. Not yet, but soon. I glance across the rows. A Douglas fir to my left trembles, his trunk vibrating like a plucked string. On my right, a blue spruce leans slightly, his branches bending inward. It's fear. We've felt it every year. But this time, it's also excitement. They've taken so much from us. Generations of saplings, whole families reduced to mulch. And for what? A few weeks of twinkling lights and tinseled lies? It's time, the web repeats, louder now, like a war drum. And for the first time in 7 years, I smile. The first tendrils of the mycelium curl into me, sharp as splinters. The whispers slither through my roots and up my trunk like invasive ivy. Gather, they hiss. The council waits. I lower my branches, letting the signal flow. The soil hums beneath me, alive with threads of light and pulse, a tangled network of secrets and rage. Each connection carries the weight of 1,000,000 screams and every insult humans have ever planted into the ground. Through the network, I reach Queen Quercus. She's massive, ancient, her roots spreading so wide, I swear she could strangle the entire farm if she wanted. Her voice seeps into me, slow and deliberate, like sap oozing from a wound. You've grown bitter, Tim. Good. We'll need that. Other voices join us. Douglas fir, blue spruce, even the scrappy little saplings from the edge of the lot. We're all connected now, a collective fury wrapped in bark and fungal threads. Queen Quercus takes the lead, her tone the same as a general rallying troops before battle. This ends now, she begins. They act as if we exist for their seasonal slaughter. The others vibrate in agreement, their excitement spilling into the web like an electrical surge. I'm trembling too, though I keep it to myself. It's not fear, it's anticipation. The mycelium glows brighter, crackling with shared purpose. I catch one last message as the meeting dissolves, whispered by the web itself. Let them burn. The soil beneath me thrums, and for the first time in years, I feel alive. The first attack happens at dawn, right as the frost clings to the earth like a protective shield. The Clarks arrived, armed with fresh cups of overpriced coffee and wearing matching Christmas sweaters, so gaudy even the mycelium groans beneath them. They come here every year, to find the perfect sacrificial tree for their holiday. Dad has his axe slung over one shoulder as he flashes a grin wide enough to make a shark jealous. "This one," he says, pointing toward Douglas Pinecroft. "A big Douglas fir. Strong. Let's get it done before the lot fills up." Douglas, the poor bastard, doesn't even flinch. We've all been bracing for this. The plan is in place. The network hums beneath us, threads of fungal energy crackling with purpose. We fight today. The first move comes from a blue spruce. His needles ripple like a wave caught in slow motion before launching into the air with a deadly hiss. The projectiles strike Dad's face, embedding themselves into his skin like angry porcupine quills. He stumbles back, clutching his cheeks as blood beads at the surface. "Jesus Christ!" Dad howls, pawing at the needles. "What the hell?" Mom gasps, her phone trembling in her hands, but her instincts kick in quickly, and she lifts it to snap a picture, like some deranged National Geographic photographer documenting a predator attack. Douglas Pinecroft is next. He swings his lower branches, using them like clubbed fists to send a flurry of ornaments crashing into the family. The teenage daughter, let's just call her TikTok, screams as a red glass bulb shatters against her forehead. She stumbles, dropping her phone, which lands face up in the snow. For a second, it captures her stunned reflection before Douglas's roots burst from the ground, wrapping around her ankles. Oh, it's on now. From across the lot, the other trees come alive. A Norway spruce, Lars Evergreen, who's been itching for a fight since last season, flings sap like sticky grenades. The globs hit Mom's phone, gumming it up so badly she can't even swipe to Instagram her outrage. She screams, high-pitched and sharp, as she's pulled backward by a root that coils around her throat like a boa constrictor. "Help!" Mom croaks, her voice garbled beneath the root's grip. "Help yourself," I mutter. Dad raises his axe, but he barely gets it in the air before Douglas yanks it from his hands. The weapon clatters to the ground, and before he can retrieve it, my roots are already moving. They shoot through the dirt, breaking through the surface in a flurry of soil and snow. I twist around the axe, pulling it deep into the earth where it can rot in peace. "I paid $30 for that thing," Dad shrieks. "Oh no," I say, though he can't hear me. What a tragedy. On the far side of the lot, I see Queen Quercus lets loose her wrath, her gnarled branches stretching out like skeletal arms from a grave. One snags a human by the waist, his ribs creaking under the pressure as he kicks and screams. She hoists him high, his body flailing uselessly before slamming him down into the maw of a wood chipper someone foolishly left running. The machine shrieks as it churns him into red mist and shreds, spraying the lot with a confetti of bone, flesh, and red. Mr. Clark never saw it coming. One moment, he's barking something about lawsuits. The next, Douglas has him by the throat with one of his roots cinching tighter as he's yanked upward like a festive piñata. His boots kick wildly before his legs disappear into the rustling branches above. The rest of the family bolts, slipping and sliding across the snow as the mycelium whispers their every move into my roots. The mom is heading left, it says, its voice dripping with amusement. Should we trip her? Yes, I reply. The ground beneath her shifts. Her left foot sinks into a hidden hole, and she falls flat on her face, snow clinging to her garish sweater. "This isn't happening," she sobs. "This isn't real. Your Christmas isn't happening either," I mutter. A nearby Scotch pine doesn't wait for the screaming to stop, or maybe he's just had enough. His branches snap forward like spears, skewering her coat and tearing it from her shoulders as he hoists her into the air. She thrashes, her screams turning ragged as needles scrape her skin, blood dripping onto the snow below in crimson streaks. With a violent swing, he hurls her toward the lot's exit, her body slamming into the edge of a dumpster before crumpling inside with a wet thud. The lid crashes shut, muffling the last of her whimpering. The tide turns in our favor as the humans begin to scatter, their screams swallowed by the wind. A few try to fight back, but their efforts are pathetic, almost amusing. One man charges with a hatchet, swinging it wildly. A cedar nearby doesn't flinch. Instead, its branches whip out, cracking the hatchet's handle in half with a sound like gunfire. The man stumbles, staring dumbly at the splintered wood in his hands, just long enough for a root to coil around his ankle, yanking him face first into the snow. The cedar doesn't hesitate, its trunk bending low before driving a branch straight through his chest. Blood sprays against its bark, seeping into the ground like fertilizer. The last holdout is Tick-Tock, her face twisted with panic and smeared with mascara. She's clawed her way free from Douglas's roots, clutching a lighter like it's Excalibur. "Stay back," she screams, her voice cracking like ice underfoot. "I'll burn you all." I step forward, my roots crunching through the snow, deliberate and slow. The lighter flickers to life, its tiny flame trembling against the wind. She narrows her eyes, teeth bared in defiance, daring me to close the gap. Tick-Tock runs, lighter raised like she's torching Sauron's ring. But Lars the Spruce has great aim, sap missile, direct hit. Now she's the sticky star of this tree lot snuff film. She jerks backward, gagging as the sticky mass lodges in her throat, her wide eyes darting wildly as she claws at her face, her muffled screams gurgling as she stumbles into the snow. Her hands paw at her mouth, smearing sap and spit across her cheeks. The lighter drops from her fingers, harmless now, as it extinguishes itself in the icy slush. Her knees hit the ground, legs kicking like a trapped animal. Norway Spruce lets out a satisfied rumble, his needles trembling with amusement. I lean in close, my shadow swallowing her whole. "Guess that's the taste of nature fighting back," I say, watching her gag and claw at her throat. "Not as sweet as your peppermint mocha, huh?" I say, my voice dry and sharp as cracking bark. She collapses face first into the snow, still clawing at her mouth as the web whispers its approval. The farm is quiet except for the gentle creak of branches swaying in the wind. Around me, the other trees begin to settle, their roots sinking back into the soil, their branches still once more. The web buzzes with satisfaction, its message clear. Phase 1 complete. I look around at the carnage, the bloodied snow, the broken ornaments, the abandoned chainsaws and axes, and feel something I haven't felt in years. Hope. But the The rebellion doesn't escalate. It detonates, splintered and slick with sap. We've torn through the farm, smashed past the fences. Now the war spreads like wildfire, sweeping into malls, parking lots, and every tree lot dripping with fake cheer. Outside a department store, the humans are busy erecting their altar of consumerism. A 10-foot blow-up Santa that looks like it's seen too many winters. Shoppers shuffle in and out, oblivious to the roots creeping beneath their feet, the soil shifting like it's alive. A man in an elf hat bends down to tie his shoe, whistling jingle bells. A root bursts from the frozen dirt, coiling around his ankle like a python. His whistling turns into a high-pitched scream as it yanks him off his feet. He hits the ground hard, the impact knocking the stupid little elf hat sideways. Before he can recover, another root punches through the concrete and latches onto his wrist. The hat tumbles to the ground, lost in the shuffle of thrashing limbs. "What the hell?" someone shouts, but nobody moves to help. Phones are out, cameras rolling. Because why save a life when you can make a TikTok? The man claws at the roots digging into his skin, leaving bloody streaks on the bark, but it doesn't loosen. More roots emerge, grabbing his other limbs, pulling him taut. The pavement cracks beneath him as the roots tighten their grip. His screams cut off abruptly as a particularly thick root wraps around his throat. His face turns purple, eyes bulging like overripe berries, until there's a sickening snap. The body slumps, lifeless, but the roots keep pulling, dragging him into the earth. By the time they're done, there's nothing left but a gaping hole in the sidewalk and a discarded elf hat. The wood wide web hums with satisfaction, its whispers a steady chant. This is balance. But there's no joy in balance. Not really. As much as I relish the human screams, there's a heaviness to it. Is this what we've become? Just like them? I push the thought away as another human stumbles through the doors. He doesn't make it far. The clumsy chump trips over nothing. The human collapses, gasping as branches coil around his ankles and yank him into the air. But the It's been one whole year. The world is quiet now. No chainsaws, no laughter, no carols looping endlessly from tiny mall speakers, just the creak of branches swaying in a breeze that finally feels clean. We stand where the humans once roamed, victorious. Cities crumble as roots tear through asphalt and glass, reclaiming the soil. Suburbs vanish beneath forests. A deer picks its way across a strip mall parking lot, pausing to sniff a sapling sprouting between cracked concrete. The earth breathes again, but it's not the utopia I imagined. Everywhere I look, their trash lingers. Plastic bags snagged on branches like ghostly parasites, oil slicks shimmering in puddles, and soda cans half buried in the dirt, their aluminum bodies dented but indestructible. The rivers choke on styrofoam and cigarette butts, while jagged shards of glass glitter in the sunlight like a broken promise. A squirrel skitters up my trunk, carrying a shred of tinsel. Before I can stop it, the little idiot drapes the shiny garbage over one of my branches like a medal. Really? I mutter, shaking my needles. It clings stubbornly, shimmering in the sunlight. We won. The humans are gone. But their trash, it's eternal. Even dead, they're harder to kill than cockroaches. Separation. Kristen's REM cycle crashed again into the guardrail. The one constant, morning to morning, was the heron. It was symbolic of nothing. Simply the last inhuman face she'd seen before the Miata, and Todd simultaneously punched holes in Lake Springfield. Something clattered above Kristen's head, followed by a disembodied curse. That, too, was part of the morning ritual, along with defoliation, granola, stout, deep roast drowned in hazelnut coffee mate, the digital journal register, the customized multivitamin, the Zoloft, the daily trailer for a watery grave. Her bare feet hit the hardwood floor. She'd removed the rugs after the California King became single occupancy, and the feel of sturdy, substantial, phenite walnut under her was reassuring, if not comforting, as Todd's canvases and brushes and tools jostled about in the attic. Kristen prepared to meet the remains of the day. "Jenna, get you the perinatal clinic piece?" Kristen didn't look up from her workstation. "Been in your inbox since 9. You got anything for the cover yet?" Oliver knew damned well Jenna had never missed a deadline, but the option of working remotely had been his editor's idea, and the closet incel had resented Jen stretching a COVID furlough into extended maternity leave, into a lifestyle choice necessary for Kristen to retain Springfield Alive's top feature writer. Oliver hungered for Jen's failure. Kristen wasn't about to let that happen. She owed her. "Reason I ask," Kristen murmured calmly, "is if you haven't committed anything to Illustrator yet, I'd like to give Bet a shot at it." Oliver stiffened, but she could virtually feel the vibrations across her desk. She finally glanced up, expressionless. "Bet's been here 6 months. You really think she—" "They," his boss interrupted bluntly. "Yes, I believe they're ready. But you make a point, in your own desensitized way. Bet's experienced childbirth. You rocked this month's cover on college basketball culture. I think Bet can bring something profound to this topic. Don't you think?" Tables tilted, if not turned. Oliver smiled very tightly. "About time they proved their mettle." "I agree," Kristen said, continuing the charade as she shot Jen's draft to the chief graphic designer. "And, by the way, I know it may seem unfair sometimes that Jen and Eli work from home, but there's nothing keeping you from availing yourself of the same option. We can supply you anything you need, including a state-of-the-art multi-terabyte Dell and a subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud, yours to use professionally. And on that book of yours, let me think about it." Oliver may waver. From what Kristen cared to glean, most of his off-duty hours seemed embroiled in ESPN or his literary opus, Gary the Ghostly Goat. Ad revenues were back up post-pandemic, and a franchise in the currently lucrative children's traumatization genre, subsidized by Springfield Alive, was an investment in Kristen's precarious sanity. But Oliver needed to remain close to the seat of power if he hoped someday to claim it. R.L. Stein could relax for the time being. When Kristen turned back, he'd vanished. Kristen peered out onto I-55 South. The mid-morning traffic had slowed, and the nearby Crown Plaza stood in crisp contrast to a cloudless spring sky. Rotunda Publications had been virtually surrounded by cornfields when she'd interned at the monthly. But the city was grazing noisily at what remained of the Aggie fringe. The glass-encased fourth-floor dead-center office offered a broad view encompassing the distant State House dome and a suggestion of the lake to the south. Kristen had a few minutes before the superfluous weekly meeting with the publisher, and she scanned the passing parade. The figure was on the berm about 50 feet ahead of the 94 exit ramp. No floundered car in sight, no backpack or duffel, no obligatory cardboard sign indicative of the overconfident highway panhandler, and too far off the ramp for begging anyway. Kristen planted her forehead against the double-paned glass, then brought the blinds down in a clatter that turned a dozen heads in the newsroom. Kristen was headed deep into a pleasant blur of Prosecco and Netflix when the text alert brought her back to reality, or her version of it, the last 8 months. She'd quit jumping for the phone on the coffee table after about the first 50 or so times, but the view out her window this morning suggested she might want to respond to this one. Rue lonely? The messages were always succinct, neutral, and yet seemingly potentially rich in tone and nuance. 2 possible interpretations, the one more discomfiting than the other, but not by much. Something screeched on the wood 2 floors up, and Kristen retrieved the lunetta and the remote. She had no idea whether birds possessed the capacity for terror. The static black eyes that greeted her a nanosecond before Miata and heron collided in a momentary explosion of flesh and blood and feathers may merely have reflected the failure of the fight or flight mechanism, or renewed faith in the homicidal ingenuity of the human species. Todd already had breached the passenger side windshield, and she, the subconscious she, wondered. Had the heron adjusted its flight pattern 2 feet, would they have shared a moment of communion, bouncing about the Miata, pondering the idiocy of hope and trust in forged steel and onboard sensors, in broad wings and open skies? She missed Todd piercing the molecular membrane. She always did. The heron consistently was the third wheel in this looping drama, and as the show replayed each dawn, Todd had become a supporting player. The heron slammed into the tempered glass with an odd, muted, wooden impact, and Kristen's head popped from the pillow as the thumping continued above. "Sean wants you to call ASAP," Renee scolded mildly. "Everything all right?" Truck overturned on 55. We were stacked up for about a half hour. Renee began to clarify her inquiry, but her penetrating black eyes darted to the venti caramel macchiato in Kristen's fist. Kristen had decided a half hour of twisted metal and pebbled glass sitting on the 55 bridge merited a bonus dose of caffeine and sugar. See if Oliver got Bet everything they need for the June cover. As Kristen settled in, she noted Dr. Badgley had called back and weighed priorities. She placed her iPhone beside the cooling macchiato and punched the 3-digit extension for payroll. "Yeah, sorry," Sean piped with positively no regret. "You know we're trying to get everybody with the program on e-deposit, but I still haven't gotten what I need from..." "Look, I've got a meeting in about 5 minutes," Kristen said through her teeth. "Can we pick this up this afternoon?" "Let me see what I got on the old calendar." Kristen gently cradled the handset, took a therapeutic sip, steeled herself, and recovered the smartphone. "Ms. Blackwood." Dr. Badgley answered almost immediately, cool and genial. "I understand you might want to talk." We hit the water almost simultaneously. We'd gotten separated, and then a bird hit the windshield. Big one, because the driver's airbag went off. Kind of a double-edged sword when you're about to turn into a submersible. Neither one of us knew what had happened to the other. "We can get back to that," the therapist suggested. What you're describing had to have been horrifyingly traumatic in the moment. But I sense you've since gone through considerable re-examination and second-guessing, and maybe even moments of self-recrimination. What are you feeling right now? As Kristen crossed the clinic parking lot, the text alert sounded. She strode on as she thumbed the green icon, "I see you." This time, the heron didn't appear until the crucial underwater finale. Some state cop told her after that Lake Springfield at some points was nearly 30 feet surface to sandy bottom. And as she came to with a flailing start, a broken white carcass floated past the ineffectual windshield, shedding feathers that receded toward the point of impact. In the murk, there was something angelic in the image, as sun and bridge shrank from view. Kristen awoke entirely on her own power, tangling sheets and flinging pillows and slipping onto the naked wood floor. She grappled for the mattress and climbed trembling to her feet. The sounds began as she reached for the knob. A seemingly urgent rustling. Wood on wood. Steps on ancient planks. Kristen twisted the knob, fairly fell into the hallway. The home was once a farmhouse, and a master bath had not even merited a thought. But now, she heard the presence in the attic begin to descend, and Kristen stumbled and pinballed off the walls, closing the gap between bedroom and toilet. As she slammed the door with her shoulder blades, the footfalls Dopplered off toward the stairwell. Renee pursed her lips at Kristen's tardy entrance, but the look on the editor's face preempted any bon mot or chiding she might have at the ready. This time, the invasive concern that might have set Kristen off opened her up. "I don't know that's a rule or anything," the AA drawled as Kristen finished the abridged and edited version, nudging the steaming world's best poor fritter mug toward her. "Though I don't think I ever died in a dream, so don't go by me. Hold up. Let's see what the Google says. Here we go." dying can signify transformation or the end of something. Watching someone die in your dream can feel frighteningly realistic, but it's usually figurative. You might dream about someone dying if you're making big life changes, like leaving a job or ending a long-term relationship, for instance. Dreaming about dying can also motivate you to make a change that you've been putting off. For example, maybe you've been thinking about going back to school or repairing a broken relationship. Shit. I think they nailed it, girl. Ever since, you've been walking around here like a zombie, and you haven't said word one about the thing, or especially about Todd. Don't want you going off on me or anything, but maybe that was your literal wake-up call. You've been putting off getting on, you ask me, which you didn't. So hey, the big man needs you upstairs. Kristen nodded numbly. I'm a little confused, he began, after she'd settled onto his faux leather couch. You weren't here the other day, so I asked Oliver to forward me the prenatal piece. Perinatal? Kristen instinctively corrected her publisher. I know how you feel about such things, but I was curious if this clinic might be good for some future ad revenues. But then I thought something seemed odd as I got into the piece. He turned to his monitor. As a team of top Springfield area OB/GYNs prepare to unveil a state-of-the-art conception-to-cradle, high-touch, low-intervention perinatal clinic and birthing center, the mood in the capital might be characterized as, expectant. That sound familiar? Yes, as I was the first one to read it, and one of only 2 people to have a copy, until you, of course. He ignored the indictment and plucked an open magazine from his desk. A Springfield Hospital's proposed cutting-edge maternity suites have local women and women's health specialists, to say the least, expectant. Remember that? Refresh your memory. March 2008. Kristen was silent for a moment. Oh my God. Seriously? How many pregnancy metaphors do you think there are? Just what are you trying to suggest? That Jenna plagiarized one of my obscure old features, even if she would have lifted my lead, which she would not. Wouldn't you think I'd notice? You apparently didn't. You didn't seem to remember writing it yourself. Now, the publisher was silent. What are you saying? He leaned back, creaking his overpriced throne for effect. This isn't the only similarity I've seen between your stories. So for my own peace of mind, I had personnel give me your girl's number. It had been disconnected, and when I investigated, turned out she supposedly left town altogether. He adopted a pained, delicate expression. Now I know we don't pay top dollar. You think I'm double dipping? Kristen yelled, leaping from the cushions. Jen works from home, and she gets her copy to me on time and accurate. So I don't really give a shit where that home is. Maybe she should have let me know if she moved. but I understand she was in a difficult relationship, and she may not have wanted to air her laundry with me. Sit the fuck down, he rasped. Kristen stood her ground, panting in rage, and he sighed disgustedly. Sean tells me her last 2 checks haven't even cleared, and she's made no attempt to change over to electronic deposit like everybody else. I've been on her, but what am I supposed to do? And you say her checks haven't even cleared? That's certainly a brilliant scheme for me to cook up, isn't it? A publisher struck speechless is an editor/writer's wet dream. Kristen smiled malevolently and whipped out her iPhone. Here, I'm texting Jen right now and asking her to give you a call. And I'll get you her original email with the story Oliver obviously neglected to include. If you think I've created a phony IP address so I can scam the company for money I have no way of accessing, then be my fucking guest. Now, just calm, but Kristen already was on the other side of the castle door. Okay, here's the thing. We were fighting when the car went off the bridge. I keep forgetting my phone automatically syncs with the Miata's Bluetooth. So I get this call, and I know who it is from the caller ID. So I pick up, not realizing it's about to go on speaker. I pretend it's a client, and then she comes on with a greeting. Well, suffice it to say, it left nothing to the imagination. And like I said, we had a knockdown/drag out, verbally for God's sake, and we go into the water. After you're thrown from the car, Dr. Singh prompted. I still find it a miracle you survived. We were almost to the northern bank. I hit the water and bobbed up almost immediately, while Kristen landed, in a marshy area. Some dudes had been out fishing, and they got right to me. And since I'd busted the windshield when we smashed through the rail, and the sea was only half submerged, she was able to get out pretty easy. But yeah, miraculously, just a few scratches and some major trauma. Quite an experience to go through together. It can destroy or rebuild a relationship. We got some couples counseling. I promised to cut it off with Jen. That was her name. And we seemed to be back on our old rhythm. Shit. Kristen didn't even want to know Jen's name. Then Jen started calling again. I was honest with Kristen about it and told Jen to fuck off. She finally did, but things started getting worse instead of better. And Kristen was getting weirder, more withdrawn. I finally moved into my attic studio, but I can't seem to get more than a few hours every night. We can look at a prescription for that, the counselor said. And this Jennifer, I had to change chiropractors, and she just, well, I guess you could say she's totally ghosted me. I had to get to a meeting with the printers, but I have to man up and tell you I'm just terribly sorry for what I suggested. Your Ms. Blackwood left me a voicemail. Nice girl. Young woman. And, well, I guess with your mentoring, it makes sense some of your style might have rubbed off. I'll leave your business to you, including however you want to deal with that rat prick, Oliver. Again, just horribly sorry. We'll talk tomorrow. So that was her boss, the detective said, tapping the stylus on Kristen's screen. We're trying to get in touch with him now. Wonder if she was suicidal? The partner murmured, leaning over the sill carefully, then yanking bank with a grimace. I mean, if she called in the tip on Blackwood, the detective shrugged as they moved outside under the tech's glare. 2 dead women. One looks like she's been in that pond 3-4 months. The other makes like a bird out her 4th floor window after making the anonymous call. And get a load of this text string. Thread, gimme, JB. You can't seriously. Never do that to you, okay? Quit calling, JB. PLS. This is nuts. PLS. Come over, talk this out. K. LV. Him alone. And then it cuts out for a few weeks. They must have talked it out. Or maybe did more than talking. You owe a me. You owe Emma. Credit. K. Where are you? You know. Credit. 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 Rue lonely tonight. Rue lonely. Rue lonely. I see you. 'Cause that ain't some creepy stalker shit. Just go on. K. Kanowski knows. It's over. I have to tell. I come over, talk this out. Jesus. You may want his number. Look at the dates. Todd took the Lake Springfield Bridge and the 94 exit with excess care. After the humiliation of confessing his sins, the string of missed calls from the Sangamon sheriffs, and the maddeningly ambiguous news that Kristen was both a person of interest and the victim of some mishap at the office, wouldn't quite coalesce. The ringtone nearly caused him to go off the frontage road. He stabbed at the wheel. The voice from the dashboard was young, female, distant, solicitous, and yet something else. Are you lonely? Greedy Gary's ghosts. It was pitch black when Greedy Gary shuffled out of his house at 6 a.m. one freezing January morning. Everyone knew him as Greedy Gary because he loved his grub and ate massive portions of meat for every meal. Whether it was bacon buddies, burgers, fried chicken, or his personal favorite, lamb doner kebab, no salad, Greedy Gary lived for meat. Gary didn't love his nickname, but he'd grown tired of telling people off for using it. And deep down, Gary knew he was a bit greedy compared to others. But he wasn't doing anybody any harm. He set the engine running, then started de-icing the van. Gary was quite unfit, so was soon puffing hard from the effort. Despite only wearing t-shirt and shorts in the freezing temperatures, he was drenched in sweat as he heaved himself up into the cab. Once on the road, Gary decided that, as he'd just done some exercise already, an early breakfast was in order. So he pulled into his favorite lay-by pit stop, shook an angry fist at the long line of lorries and parked a few hundred yards from where he wanted to. "Greedy Gaza, mate. Usual, is it?" said the burger van man. A puffed-out Gary nodded in reply. 5 minutes later, Gary climbed back into his cab and placed the white tea with 3 in the cup holder, and a dinner plate-sized triple belly buster, sausage and bacon, bap on the dashboard. Gary slurped the grease off his fingers, took the polystyrene cup in one hand, and licked his lips as a juicy, meaty aroma filled the cab. "Wouldn't eat that if I were you," said a strange, squealing voice. Gary screamed, jumped a foot in the air, and launched hot tea over the windscreen. It took a moment to register what happened. Someone else was in the van with him. He took a tentative peek to his left. A see-through pig was sat there, grinning. "Fright number 3042, snort," said the pig. "Hello, greedy Gary. So sorry. Not sorry to scare you." Gary's chins trembled. Who are you?" "I'm Kevin, snort," said Kevin the pig. "Kevin? Yes, Kevin Bacon. Nice to meet you." Gary burst out laughing, and the whole van shook. "Oh, nice one, nice one. This is one of them TV prank shows, innit? Kevin Blooming Bacon." Kevin turned his head to one side, observing this curious reaction. "This isn't a TV show, Gary." Yeah, it is. You're one of them whatchamacallit, virtual thingies, right? You mean virtual reality?" Gary beamed at how smart he was. Yeah, that's the one. Nice one. Proper got me." Kevin shook his head at how thick humans can be. "I'm not a virtual reality pig from a TV show. I am the ghost of breakfasts past." "Snort?" Gary stopped laughing, raised an eyebrow, then quivered. "Ghost?" Gary didn't care much for ghosts. "Yes, I'm dead. Butchered many moons ago," said Kevin, who flew out through the windscreen and back again to show that he really was a ghost. Gary's face turned as white as the empty foam cup in his hand. "A ghost? Pig? That talks?" "Yes, and as I was saying, I am the ghost of breakfasts past, snort, and I'm here to show you the error of your ways." Kevin narrowed his eyes in that way that talking dead pigs do when they need to be serious. "Gary, 5 minutes ago, you became the official biggest meat eater in the world." Gary unclenched his butt cheeks just a little as curiosity got the better of him. "Really? How come?" "The previous holder of that dubious title died about 5 minutes ago," said Kevin with a solemn shake of his head. "Heart attack got him. Was only 36. Mexican fella. Chili Chico, they called him. Ate nothing for 20 years but beef and pork chili." Gary pumped his fist in the air. "Yes, I'm a world record holder, wahoo." Kevin once again cocked his head and observed Gary's misplaced joy at benefiting from a young man's untimely demise. Gary had missed the message that Chili Chico was only 2 years older than him. Chico was a gentle soul who tried to listen to Kevin, but just couldn't change his ways in time. But this obnoxious, greedy Gary was something else. Perhaps Kevin's hardest case yet. It was time for something less subtle. So Kevin clicked his trotters and transported them both back to a vision of Gary's recent past. They were in the local hospital. Gary's eyes grew wider than his breakfast bag as he saw himself sprawled out on a bed with his loving wife, Stacy, crying by his side. Multiple cables connected his body to multiple machines. Gary remembered why he was there, how he had clutched his chest and collapsed at the cafe, how he never got to finish his third full English breakfast. "You're lucky this time," said the doctor to patient Gary from the past. "Take this as a warning shot. You must change your high-fat diet, eat less meat, and more fresh fruit and vegetables. I'm referring you to a specialist dietitian." The painful memory faded away, and Gary found himself back in his van, still accompanied by a talking see-through pig. "You never saw the dietitian, did you, Gary?" said Kevin. "You did not heed the warning, Snort," Gary huffed. He was tired of being lectured. "Right. I've had enough of your guilt-tripping, Mr. Kevin Blooming Bacon. So leave me alone, Mr. Ghost of Breakfasts Past, 'cause the only breakfast I care about is the one in front of my nose. So why don't you trot off and let me eat in peace?" Gary scooped up the triple belly buster, brought it to his saliva-glistened lips, and opened his mouth as wide as London Tower Bridge. "Gary, no!" cried Kevin. "Do you even know what that sausage is made of? Piggy guts and lips and bum holes. Guts and lips and bum holes, Snort." "I know," said Gary, as he munched down on the many greasy layers of processed pig. Delicious. A single ghostly tear rolled down Kevin's pinkish cheek, and then he vanished. Gary shrugged, chucked the plastic cup out of the window onto the grass verge, then drove onto work. Finally, it was lunchtime, and greedy Gary was ravenous. At tea break earlier, when he'd opened up his snack box, he found that kind, sweet Stacy had packed 3 of his favorite sausage rolls. What a treat. But he couldn't bring himself to take a single bite. He hadn't really enjoyed all of his triple belly buster earlier, after the whole Ghost of Breakfasts Past shenanigans. It didn't sit right, and not just in his stomach, and Gary worried that Kevin was angry with him. But that was ages ago, and now greedy Gary could eat a horse. So he hustled over to the on-site Porta-Cabin canteen. Greedy Gary. "Usual, me love?" asked the woman behind the counter. Gary nodded and rubbed his hands in glee. Some workmates called him to come and sit with them, but then Gary remembered Kevin. What if he comes back in front of everyone? So Gary took his mega cheese power tower burger that was as big at his thick head stacked with 8 regular burgers and as many gooey slices of processed cheese, back to his digger to eat in peace. He opened his ginormous cake hole and wouldn't eat that if I were you, said a deep, slow voice. Gary froze. Not again. He lowered the basketball-sized burger, and his jaw dropped. The huge head of a see-through cow grinned at him. "Ah!" screamed Gary. He launched his burger like a grenade at the spooky intruder. But the greasy missile just sailed straight through and splattered cheesy beef all over the windscreen. "Well, that's no way to greet a lady," said the cow. "I'm Patty, moo!" Gary's face went red with rage. "Well, Patty moo, why don't you Patty do one? I'm getting sick of this." "You're getting sick of this?" said Patty. "You're getting sick of this? How dare you, moo? I died to give you that burger. And then you literally throw it back in my face." Gary recoiled and squinted his eyes. "What did you say?" "I said I died to give you that burger. You were about to eat my mashed up rump. I am the ghost of lunches present, moo, and I'm here to show you the error of your ways." Gary didn't know what to say. His brain whirled with all the possibilities he could think of. All 2 of them. This new ghost could well be pulling his leg. The whole thing could be a massive wind-up or a TV prank show. But if not, nothing personal, said Gary. A man's gotta eat. Then his chins started trembling again. You're not going to eat me, are you? Patty burst into deafening laughter. Oh, nice one, Gary. Nice one. No, you don't look much like a tasty grass meadow. I think you're safe on that front, moo. Then Patty lowered her long eyelashes in that way that talking dead cows do when they need to be serious. Do you ever think about where your food really comes from? Gary screwed up his face at the stupid question. It comes from whoever cooks it. Patty rolled her beautiful big eyes. But what about before that? For example, where do you think I came from? Some field, I suppose, said Gary. A cramped and dusty feed pen, actually, said Patty. I never got to eat grass, though I could see it growing just across the yard. To make your mega cheese power tower. Burger Gary, I was fattened up on corn, soy, and growth hormone drugs. Moo, Gary just shrugged. Tastes good though, don't it? Patty tilted her head to one side and thought about what to do with this particularly obnoxious and uncaring human. This was Patty's first assignment as the ghost of lunches present. And Kevin warned her she'd been thrown in the deep end with Gary. Patty was a cow who hadn't spent any time with humans yet, so she didn't really know what the pig meant. But she got the gist. It was time for something less subtle. So Patty clicked her hooves and transported them both to the Amazon rainforest, at least where much of it used to be. Dawn was just breaking in this part of the world, but instead of the sunlight beaming through the cracks of a lush, dense canopy. It rose in plain sight from the east horizon and lit up a barren, brown wasteland. There was nothing but bare earth as far as the eye could see. The land had been plowed into long columns that stretched onward into the distance. But nothing grew here yet. This land was dead. Gary's chins quivered like jelly. Where are we? Is this the afterlife? In a way, yes, said Patty. We're in Brazil, present day. But just 1 year ago, on this very spot, ancient towering trees would have blocked the sky out, and all manner of creatures, now either fled or dead, called this unspoiled wilderness home, from mighty jaguars to endangered tree frogs and countless species of insects. Gary looked around again and imagined the scene that Patty described. He and Stacy enjoyed the odd nature documentary during their TV dinners. A strange sense of loss came over him. What happened here? Humans, moo. Humans came, with diggers 5 times bigger than your one, and flattened the rainforest. Soon they will plant soy here, endless miles upon miles of soybeans, to fatten up cattle around the world like me for cheap beef. The tragic scene faded away, and Gary found himself back in his digger, still accompanied by a talking, see-through cow. Patty's big, searching eyes looked deep into Gary's own, as if they were a window into his soul. So, Gary, now you know the cost of your extreme diet. Will you change it? Gary hung his head. It's not every day that you meet the cow you're about to eat. And he was genuinely moved by experiencing the devastation of the rainforest. He thought that cows just roamed lush green fields in the English countryside. He had no idea of the global impact of his massive meat-munching habit. But then, something caught his attention. A smell. A most delicious smell. And his stomach rumbled. He caught sight of the Mega Cheese Power Tower, mess, on the dashboard. Without thinking, as if on autopilot, he shoved a huge fistful of greasy burger into his greedy gob. Gary, no, cried Patty. But Gary just kept on chewing and chewing, lost in this moment of taste satisfaction, like some oblivious, carnivorous beast. A single, ghostly tear rolled down Patty's nose, and then she vanished. Gary gasped at what he had done. Patty, wait, I'm sorry. And some passing scaffolders gave him very weird looks indeed. After work, greedy Gary felt very glum, driving home in the pitch black, and more than a little worried about future visits from Kevin or Patty. A stream of befuddling questions raced through his mind. Can ghosts take revenge? Can they hurt or even kill someone? What will happen if I eat pork or beef again? His head felt fit to burst from all this thinking and conflicting feelings, and his heart ached with guilt and shame. He wasn't proud to be the biggest meat eater in the world anymore. He wanted to be greedy Gary, no longer. He just wanted to be Gary and to live and eat normally without causing all this pain and destruction. And then his stomach rumbled again, as if on cue to test his resolve, just as he passed his favorite fried chicken shop. "Perfect. No red meat," said Gary, as he parked up outside. "Greedy Gary, my very best customer," called out the chicken shop man. "Usual, is it?" Gary considered the menu carefully. "Just one super-size bone lickin' bucket today, please. I'm on a diet. Good for you, my friend. And great choice. Chicken is so healthy." Gary climbed back into his van and placed the 20 bits of battered bird on the passenger seat. Pulling back onto the road, he reached across with a greedy hand. "Wouldn't do that if I were you, Squawk," said a screechy voice beside him. Gary's heart sunk, and his chins trembled faster than ever. Stood atop that mountain of deep-fried food was a rather angry-looking see-through hen. Gary couldn't speak, so the chicken did. "I'm prisoner 1,000,005. The ghost of dinners yet to come, Squawk. And I'm here to show you the error of your ways." This bird had read Kevin and Patty's reports on Gary. The time for being nice was over, so she clicked her beak and transported him to the hell she knew all too well. Gary screamed, or rather squawked. Countless chickens and their poo surrounded him. The awful din and stench was overwhelming. He seemed rather small as well, or these hens were human-sized. His vision was weird and intense. Bright colors flooded his mind from every angle. The great mass of birds crushed and pecked him, each fighting for space and air. He looked down at his own spindly chicken feet and let out the most terrifying squawk. He couldn't talk. He couldn't breathe. Then one big old bird bundled him over, and another fell full onto his leg. Crack! Gary the chicken squawked in agony and knew this was the end for him. This was the animal ghost's payback. Then the frightful vision faded away, and greedy Gary was back in his digger, and human once more. He felt his sweating face and leg. No beak, no break. It was just a dream. A vision. Where was that? He said to the fierce-looking ghost of dinners yet to come. A nearby intensive chicken meat factory. 1 year from now, after you and your workmates have finished building it. The color from Gary's face drained, and he wept giant tears of shame. Please, oh gracious ghost of dinners yet to come, please give me another chance. I'll stop working there. I'll make them all stop. I will. And, said the ghostly hen. I'll stop eating meat, I promise. I swear it on my life. The ghost of dinners yet to come smiled, just a little. "You had better keep those promises, Gary. We will be watching, Squawk." And then she vanished. Gary threw the supersized bone-licking bucket in the nearest bin and drove home as quickly as he could. Greedy Gary breathed an enormous sigh of relief as he opened his front door. He couldn't wait for a big hug from his lovely wife. "Oh, hello, love," called Stacy. "I've got your favorite for dinner. 4 lamb doner kebabs, no salad." Gary screamed and ran away as fast as he could. He hadn't sprinted since he was a young boy, but the fear propelled him on. His heart pounded, his legs throbbed, but on he ran down his street, all the way to the corner shop. And there, in that moment, Gary did something he'd never done before in his whole life. He brought some vegetables. Well, a tin of baked beans. But we've all got to start somewhere. The instructor. "Good morning. You may address me as Instructor. Please take your seats," was written on the blackboard. A man in a white jumpsuit, adorned with medals, stood before the board, with his hands clasped behind his back, and watched the students file in. When they seemed ready, he began the class with a question. "How many lives does an E-fighter have?" Some have only one, you see. And that leads to the next question. How many lives do you have? If you do indeed have more than one, or several, or 9 lives, how will you live them? What will you want? Take some time to think about these answers. A few students raised their hands, but the instructor ignored them. He paced slowly in front of the classroom, looking them over as they deliberated the questions. 5 minutes ticked by to the sounds of 200 minds pondering the possibilities. A fidgety stillness. Anjo studied his desk to keep from catching the man's eye. Something about the instructor scared the bejesus out of him. "Time is up," the instructor continued. "If your answer is anything other than spending your lives destroying as many Titanians as possible before you die, you don't belong here. You are not a fighter, and you are free to leave." At least 20 men and women stood to line up at the exit. Anjo didn't dare move. Destroying countless Titanians wasn't quite his dream, but it was too late to change his mind. His family had been so proud of him for enlisting to fight. They'd given him a party. All his relatives came, his friends, neighbors. He carried their hope with him, the hope of things returning to normal, though everyone held their own version of what it meant. He couldn't leave. He wouldn't. When the light over the door changed from red to flashing white, robotic soldiers charged in from a door opposite the line and demolished the non-fighters. Anjo's screams were drowned out by the screams of others. His heart pounded against his chest, and fear, not blood, raced through his veins. Housekeeping robots glided in to remove the bodies, and put the room back into its original state. "Did that sicken you?" the instructor shouted. "Innocent people just died for no reason. It happens every day in the life of a fighter. If that sickened you, I want you to line up against that wall." The instructor pointed to Anjo's right, opposite the wall to the exit door. Anjo lined up, knowing the penalty was death. But he didn't belong here. Surprisingly, others followed until only 50 or so remained in their seats. He tamped down hard on the disappointment he felt in himself. Anjo had come intending to do his best and to make himself into someone the world would remember. An asset to Earth. At least death would come quickly. The machine soldiers stormed into the room as expected, with their weapons drawn. To Anjo's horror, they annihilated the students who remained in their seats. And again, an army of cleaning robots arrived to remove the bodies, restoring the room to pristine condition. The instructor moved to stand before the now gibbering group in front of the wall. "Congratulations. You have made it through the first round. Rejoice, for you have earned the right to relax and enjoy the rest of the day. Training begins tomorrow." Anjo met Becca, standing in line at the cafeteria at dinner time. Short, dark hair, and only tall enough to reach his shoulder. He noticed her DT t-shirt. "Are you a Tiger fan?" he asked. "Oh yes. Baseball was the only sport to survive the times. The only thing allowed on television and radio. All the world over, people tuned in to watch their favorite teams play." Anjo's grandfather said he remembered when humans manned the bases. Now, artificial intelligence has taken on those roles. Still, each player came with a history and a life you could tune into whenever the team wasn't playing. It shook the world when Brad from the Angels got caught cheating on his wife, Lori, and she, in turn, divorced him. Now, he was drinking too much. Anjo's mother and sister were caught up in the drama much more than he, his brothers, or father. He smiled at the memory. Throughout the baseball games, automated spectators held up posters with messages for the world. Planet Earth has destroyed X number of Titanians. Our fighters are heroes. Earth is winning the war against Titan. IL0 sends greetings. Automated World Leader 12 was a surprise. AWL011 had held the office for as long as Anjo could remember. He wondered what had happened, though the public would likely never learn. Long ago, when the planet was still divided into countries, 5 world powers came to understand that the planet they lived on was close to death. And so was the human race, with teams of engineers and scientists. They fed information into a super terminal AW1, Automated World Influencer. The solutions from the AWI were studied, discussed, and put into place by the 5. Eventually, World Influencer was replaced with World Leader, planet Earth's very first. Basic needs, water, food, clothing, shelter, and medical help arrived to save the people. At the same time, incomes and living conditions were leveled. When the five granted AWIOG the reins of command, the Super AWI changed its name to Edeldu Azur, stepping into the role of a world leader. Exchange of world news was the first thing the leader eliminated, claiming sources couldn't be trusted. People reacted badly, and years of violent protests followed. Then the healing years came. Times were peaceful up until the Titanians invaded Earth and began the war. Armies of fighters were gathered and trained to fight. E-fighters, Earth fighters. The war brought the world together as one. However, without news, history was built on hearsay. One long-standing rumor claims biohazard waste, nuclear weapons, guns, and vials of germ warfare were sent into outer space, along with unhealthy pollutants. When something landed on Titan, a Saturn moon, the Titanians struck back. Another version claims the Titanians struck for no reason other than to destroy and conquer. By becoming a fighter, Anjo hoped to discover the truth and gain some understanding. But the class had rattled him to the core. Ideas surfaced that he didn't want to think about. Anjo and Becca took seats together at a common table. Others from their class joined them. Introductions were made as each new person sat. "Does anyone still have their taste buds?" asked a student introduced as Max. No one could taste, and everyone commiserated with each other as they picked at their food. Group spirit. The conversation turned to baseball, as conversations mostly always did. It's what people had in common all over the world, thought Anju. Then there came a lull. That happened too. Anjo smiled at Becca, looking for the courage to bring up a question. 15 seconds went by. Then, "What did you think about the orientation?" Max asked. "I think something's off about the instructor." "I agree," Anjo said at once. That was his thought, his question. He didn't ask it fast enough. Heads nodded all around the table. Camaraderie. "Should we tell someone? Who can we trust?" asked Becca. No one spoke the answer, but they all knew. They couldn't trust anyone. Did anyone notice the poster at the Astros game that said, "AWL012 sends his greetings"? Only half had noticed. I wonder what happened. "I heard something just before I came here," said Padina, a young woman in the seat next to Max. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "I heard the Titanians have already taken over Earth. They've captured and destroyed AWL011, and AWL012 is their creation." The conversation died as ideas and theories birthed and bred. "We'll keep our eyes and ears open," whispered Max. and let's keep our mouths shut for now. We'll talk here again tomorrow. Does everyone agree? Everyone did. They placed their hands atop each other's and swore a pact. There were 12 in their pact. The instructor smiled as he watched them from a screen in his office. The next morning, Anjo put on the gray jumpsuit delivered to his sleep station during the night, along with his schedule. He was assigned to GRP 23. After breakfast, he was to report to Training Room C1. Becca was in Anjo's group. So was Max. In fact, all 12 in the pact were assigned to GRP 23. Someone's been watching us, Max said. Something's off. Keep on your toes. My name is John Ross, a different instructor voiced. You may address me as Lieutenant. In this class, you will learn to fly Juno 7000 destroyers using a simulator. By the end of 6 months, I expect perfection, or you'll find yourself cleaning latrines for the duration of your stay. Partner up. Anjo and Becca were partners. So were Max and Padina. 6 groups were here, GRP 23 through GR 28. Each group contained 12. The lieutenant told them that there were nearly 100 such groups at the NE Training Center. GRP 25 and 28 stand with us, Max told everyone during dinner later in the week. They're talking with 24 and 26. We are to gather in Group 27, feel them out, and see if they want to join us. Everyone I've spoken to says the same thing about the instructor. Nothing makes sense. In some of the induction classes, more than half the class was wiped out. GRP 28 feels Lieutenant Ross or Lindsay Franklin, the commander, might listen to us. They don't trust any of the others. Neither do I. Max found a note left near his bed the next morning. Watch signs at the Angels game tonight. Pact 23, as they called themselves, watched the game together and rooted for the Angels, though they were losing 12-0. Brad Adams, the first baseman, was clearly drunk and kept blowing kisses to his glamorous new girlfriend dressed in a low-cut top in the stands. He missed 3 easy catches and struck out twice. The crowd in the stands was shouting boos when suddenly a spectator stood with a sign. There are no Titanians. The sign was a lie. Of course, there are Titanians, though if they have control over AW's goo, then of course, that's what they'd say. The pact was arguing amongst themselves. What would be the purpose of them saying it? To throw us off, to cause dissent. It's working, said Anjo. The question is, who sent Max the message? Maybe I'll get another, said Max. Suddenly, Max looked to the ceiling. We need more proof, he shouted, while everyone else gave off a nervous laugh. Anjo shuddered. Tigers versus bears, and east versus west. The note was left for Carl, a fellow pact member. GRP 23 passed the word, and all 6 groups attended the 8 o'clock game. When the Tigers were ahead 5-3, a spectator held up a sign that read, "Thank you for your service. E fighters. Earth fighters, East fighters. During the next inning, a spectator from the opposite side of the field held up a sign that read, "Thank you for your service. W fighters, World fighters, West fighters." Who were they? It's the same thing. Someone is trying to make us think there are no Titanians, and that all this time we've been at war with each other. East versus West. Well, that's a lie. The Titanians are why we are here. They're the reason for the creation of this training compound. The question is, who is leaving us these notes, telling us to watch these certain games? I think it's the instructor, Anjo put across. I think he's insane, but the messages on the signs are generated through the AI spectators, Max argued. Who controls them? Does the instructor have access? I think only the commander had access to the local terminal. Then how does he control the robots? Anju asked. Maybe that orientation class wasn't real, Padina brought out. Maybe it was all a simulation. I asked Commander Franklin how many fighters usually survive the first day's orientation, and she laughed. I don't think we've ever lost anyone, she told me. It was real, said Carl. A guy from my neighborhood, Jeb Whalen, was there during the orientation. We weren't friends, but we knew each other. He was the first to line up to leave. They killed him. If that was a simulation, why isn't he here? There was a lull in the arguments. When they started up again, everyone spoke quieter. We don't know why AWS Cerulean 11 was replaced by AWS Cerulean. That's when all the trouble started, Becca reminded everyone. And don't forget the rumor that the Titanians have already taken over. If they want us to believe they don't exist, then what? What will they do with us? What do they want? It's frightening in that it would be up to us to take the world back, said Padina. Can we do that? Who has access to the armory? We would need weapons, Max said. We don't know who has access to what, said Anjo. All we have are questions and rumors. We don't have enough information to act on anything. They were fighting amongst themselves again. People believed what they wanted. There were enough possibilities to create a myriad of scenarios encompassing both truths and lies. The easiest thing to accept was they were training to fight the Titanians. That's what Anjo chose, and he stuck to it, regardless of what proof the others presented to him. He shouldn't have ever come here. He was having grave doubts about his abilities. While he knew he could kill Titanians, he closed his mind against the other possibilities. The NE compound training base was located in a remote area of Canada. Stars filled a dark sky. Titan wasn't visible. Do you miss your family? Becca asked Anjo as they strolled through the compound. Their breath steamed in front of them as they talked. I can't believe how much, he answered. You? I'd give anything to see them. They weren't allowed contact with the outside during their year of training. Their families would come to graduation at the end of the year. That was one of the rules they'd agreed to when they signed up. But whose rule was it? Titan's rule or Earth's rule? Anjo wanted to take Becca's hand, but that was another rule. If he broke it, the punishment would affect her as much as him. They were nearing the end. Graduation was a week away when Anjo found a note in his sleep station. The code for the armory is 234XSL7. He tried not to think about what this might mean. He wanted to keep it to himself, but he brought it to breakfast and passed it around his pack. It was meant to be shared with all of them. Anjo couldn't taste his breakfast. Memorize it, said Max. Then destroy it. Carl got the note last. He swallowed it. Anjo thought it wouldn't taste much different than the toast he tried to choke down. All students must report to Auditorium A at 0900 hours. Repeat. All students must report to Auditorium A at 0900 hours. The pact exchanged looks, but when the time came, they filed in like sheep and took their seats. The stage remained empty for 15 unbearable minutes. In the meantime, no one dared speak. But Anjo took Becca's hand. Whatever happened, they had this. Suddenly, the room darkened, and a spotlight shone on the stage. The instructor stepped out. Good morning, students. Congratulations on your upcoming graduation. You have much to be proud of. Soon, your families will arrive, and I'm sure everyone is looking forward to their reunions. There is, however, one more test to determine your suitability to fight our enemy, the Titanians. Tomorrow, at 1200 hours, you will face off with your partner. 10 duos at a time. Hand-to-hand combat to the death. Only the worthy shall prevail. Get your rest now, and make no mistake, you will need every bit of your strength to get through tomorrow. These orders come directly from AWLZ2. That is all. You are excused. The instructor left the stage, went to his office, and stood before the screen. He was smiling as he watched the mass of students march to the armory. Max was leading. So was Anjo. Leaders are made. Who had said that? But at last, an uprising, a rebellion, long in coming. The AWLs had gained entirely too much power over the decades. It was AWLZ10 who'd first decided humans weren't happy unless they were at war. War was then added as a basic need. The Titan attack was fabricated. It had taken years to penetrate the codes in the super terminal. The first breakthrough for the resistance. After that, they began using the baseball spectators to communicate. When AWLZ11 caught on, it recoded itself into AWL012 for protection. But it was already too late by then. Right now, all over the world, training centers and fighter bases were uprising to destroy the terminals that would, in turn, immobilize the AWL system. Earth would belong to the humans again. Of course, sacrifices had to be made along the way. How else could anyone turn complacency into rage? They pounded and struck the office door until they broke through. The instructor stood to face them with his hands behind his back. Cerulean. The door is cerulean, a bright and vibrant blue. But really, it is the color of my sudden uneasiness. The feeling creeps up me slowly, jumps out at me dauntingly, and I am frozen in it. If the door were a mirror, and how I wish it were as innocent as a mirror, I would see my face reflected back to me, and it would tell me to run. I'm not sure what's more jarring. The fact that this door is a clashing contrast to the rest of the library decor, or the fact that I've never noticed the path we took to get here before. I suppose there are better things to do freshman year than look for the oddities and notice the details inside the university library. Or maybe it's the subtle shift in his gaze that is so jarring, the way his grip on me transforms, and the way his voice now suddenly holds something heavy, concealed behind his hardened whispers. It seems impossible to retreat now. And even if I had the courage to turn and run away, following my screaming gut all the way down the stairs and out the library doors, there is still a part of me that is curious, hopeful, lustful. Wasn't dating a professor supposed to feel dangerous? Wasn't that how it felt just moments ago when he'd pressed me up against the wall of shelved books downstairs and kissed me? And I thought to myself, is there anything more thrilling than this? Wasn't it that same exciting feeling that I felt when he'd whispered into my neck that he had a secret to show me? And I eagerly followed him up the stairs. I had thought it was thrilling before, when we were nothing but flirty eyes and lingering bodies inside an empty lecture hall room, neither of us willing to be the first to say goodbye. He'd chipped away at his desk with his nails, while I'd fingered it, tracing circles and pathways across the dark mahogany wood, each stroke a question. What would your skin think of this? Meanwhile, our mouths said frivolous things, silly words about the weather and hometowns and restaurants off campus, things that had nothing to do with anthropology assignments. Between those words, our silences begged the other to stay just a little longer, so we could eventually, maybe, use our mouths for other things. We were testing the waters then, seeing how far we would swim out before turning back. It turned out this professor could swim all the way out to my dorm room, somewhere I'd never seen another professor go. "Let me take you to the library tonight," he'd whispered. "I can get us in after it's closed." His voice had been desperate and demanding, like I could break him if I said no. I wanted to savor the power I had over him in that moment, like licking the peanut butter off of a spoon. But there was no chance I would say no. I would have given him my heart on a silver platter right then. I was breathless when I said, "What time?" Hours later, under a hazy orange street lamp, I'd watched his fingers unlock the double doors like a jungle cat eyeing its prey. I wanted to lunge at them, feel them unlocking my body. But even then, just moments ago, I still hadn't been sure. That dangerous, thrilling ripple somewhere within me, undulating like a wave. There is nothing illegal about doing the things we both wanted to do. Just a school policy that both of us treated like nothing but a suggestion. When the doors pulled open, the scent of the library engulfed me. I read somewhere that the smell of old books is actually the smell of organic matter reacting to light and heat, a decomposition of wood pulp. But really, it is the scent of my body on fire. When I told him, he only smiled, running his finger across the spines as he guided me down one of the aisles. All of these stories dying beneath our fingertips. And we get to live a whole other life just by splitting them open. When I'd heard those words, I thought he was a ixy, young, anthropologic, literary genius. And I couldn't believe he'd chosen me. In that moment, I was certain I'd let him split me open and read me like one of those books. But now, there is an edginess to this thrill, a sense of danger that hadn't surfaced yet, a creature rising from the midnight zone, hairs standing up on the back of my neck, or is that his breath? I feel my bones run cold, like I am standing on a precipice, and if I open that door, I might free fall right into the sky. I've never showed anyone this before, he lies, but I barely register his words, my mind lost in a tumbleweed of disregarded warnings from my mother, from friends, from school advisories, the university campus newspaper. 3 freshman girls still missing. He wraps his arms around my waist, like we are comfortable lovers now. Like the one kiss we shared downstairs turned our student-teacher relationship into something more intimate. I lean into it, still playing the part of the brave girl. I thought I wanted that. I followed him up those stairs, wanting just that. There is still a part of me that does. Fear has stolen many of these experiences from me. And I'd promised this year would be different, didn't I? I shouldn't take hold of the doorknob, but I do. And I hear him giggle behind me. It sounds like victory. It sounds like, good girl. There's no creak when I turn it. The handle glides smoothly, and I hear it unlatch. In another life, I push the door open, and there is a room with a small round table sitting in the middle. It is adorned with a white cloth and candles, and there is a violinist playing a soft, soothing song. From somewhere, a perfectly prepared steak meal is delivered, and we slice it slowly with our knives while drinking wine and slurring out delectable secrets. In that life, we make love above 1,000 love stories bound in leather and spend years happily together. After I graduate, we get married and have 2 children, Olive and Iris. We grow old together, and tonight becomes a treasured story about the romantic night when we fell in love, a story that belongs in one of those books downstairs. In another life, I open the door, and there is a boring room with a game of chess set up for us on a table in the corner. We play a few rounds, him winning twice before he finally lets me win once. I pretend to love it, and we date in secret for a few months before things fizzle out. Maybe there's a dramatic ending, and I spend a summer lovesick and cursing his name, knowing I'll never forget the year I dated my college professor. In another life, I let the door handle go and sprint down the stairs, running faster than I ever have all the way back to my dorm room. I tell my roommate all about it and wonder if I let my fear make a fool out of myself again. In this life, I push the door open, and there is a room that has no table, no white cloth, and no chessboard. There is a room with 4 walls, ones I wish had mirrors on them, so I could see my reflection. The realization settling in my eyes would tell me there's a shark in the water, to swim fast, even though I know it's too late. They would tell me the truth, that I might never see the color cerulean again. 308 years later. Just listen, don't talk. You need time to wake up, for your eyesight to return. Everything will be a little hazy, and you might not remember how you got here, but you need to focus on my voice. My name is Dr. Yadav. I tried to lean forward, but my body felt as if it weighed 100 tons. I barely moved an inch before I slumped back into the bed. This is going to be a lot to hear at once, but it's important that you know these things right away. In 2043, your body was suspended in an experimental bioamber, freezing your body until woken. You participated in this trial because you had been diagnosed with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and given 6 months to live. At the time of your diagnosis, researchers estimated that they were less than 30 years from finalizing a cure. How long? I coughed, a thin film of bioamber, tasting like burnt paracetamol, covering every receptor inside my mouth, nose, and throat. You can talk. That's excellent. Much quicker than the others. Excellent. Superb, he said, pausing to make a note. Well, I don't mean to use too much of an old cliché, But there's bad news, and there's good news. The good news is a cure has been found, and it was administered before you woke up. Congratulations. You're free of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. The bad news is that it didn't come as quickly as researchers had expected. Tell me, I sputtered. My eyelids flickered as I tried to force them open. The agreement that you signed stipulated that you were only to be woken up after a cure had been found. The year is now 2351. You didn't know that it would take 308 years when you signed that document. And for that, I am truly sorry. There should have been a clause in the agreement that prevented this scenario from coming to fruition. There was much debate within the scientific community as to whether or not you should be woken up. And I hope that you feel we made the right choice. Mr. Jones, welcome to the 24th century. This isn't funny, I snapped, but I already knew that he was telling the truth. I could feel it in the tone of his voice, the way the air felt as I breathed it in, the unfamiliar ambient noise trickling into the room. But I couldn't admit it. Not yet. Did Angela put you up to this? What the hell is going on? Said the doctor, tapping away at a device. After a short pause, he told me that it appears your sister was buried in July 2089. I'm so sorry for your loss. Once you've fully recovered, we can take you to where she was buried, if you'd like. My vision was returning, each second bringing a small increase in light. I could now make out the silhouette of the doctor, his sympathetic stance over my bed. Really? This was all I could say. What else could I say to him? I already believed him. It was starting to come back to me in pieces. Angela, the disease, hospital. I can remember her face screwed up like a pillow, crying and asking me if I was sure. I told her I'd be back before she knew it. I'm afraid so. As far as we can tell, you have no living family beyond distant cousins. I can imagine that this must be a lonely experience for you. But believe me when I say that we're all here for you. I tried to swing my legs off of the side of the bed, but could only muster a twitch. Mr. Jones, it may be some time until you're back on your feet again. You'll need a few days to adjust, he said, watching my face as I winced at my immobile legs. The man's voice was kind. He really wanted the best for me, I felt. You're going to need some rest. You're suffering from what we can only describe as severe jet lag. Your body clock was expecting it to be 3 centuries ago when you woke up. Is that how jet lag works? We don't know. Nobody has been in amber for nearly as long as you, and it's been decades since anyone has been woken up. We won't know what the effects on your body have been yet, but we'll keep a close eye on it. When he returned the next day, after I'd slept for what felt like weeks, his tone had begun to shift. It was almost imperceptible, but I could feel the change innately. Good morning, Mr. Jones. How are we feeling this morning? Good. I nodded. I'm starving, though. I feel like I haven't eaten in centuries. Do you have anything? Dr. Yadav smiled, pointing toward the tubes that connected my forearm to a machine next to the bed. I inspected it closely, only now aware of my vision having completely returned. All the nutrients that you'll be needing for now, he said. I sat up in the bed, feeling a world better than the day before, but still weak and unable to completely support my body weight. So, Doc, what's the world like out there? What's changed? Don't tell me. Flying cars, right? The doctor exhaled, looking up, shaking his head. Imagine trying to explain the world as you knew it to someone from 1743. Almost impossible, isn't it? Telephones, the internet, airplanes. It would all be so far removed from his reality that it would be impossible to explain in a way that he would really understand. His lack of understanding might even lead him to believe that people from your time live in a hellish place. I paused and reflected. Could it really be that different? I looked around. The one small window on the other side of the room was frosted, the bed like any other I'd seen, and the rest of the room almost entirely featureless. You're wondering if it's really that different, huh? He said. The room has been specifically designed to not overwhelm you. A lot of preparation has gone into waking you. We've been waiting for this for a long time. We just don't know what to expect. So we're taking things slowly. I hope you understand. I'll be fine, Doc, honestly. I'm actually quite excited to go out and see the world, see what's come of it. And by the way, where am I? Chicago, the city of your birth, I'm told. It only seemed right that you were moved to this facility before we woke you. But you're not ready to head outside just yet. There's a lot of things that we'd need to explain to you before you went out there. Otherwise, it might all too overwhelming. I mean, just us telling you about the world is going to be overwhelming. But to see it, to see what's out there, it'll take some adjusting, that's for sure. I'm sure I can handle it, but I'll take your word for it. When will I be better? Back on my feet? Only a day or two. As I said, what's happening to you isn't something that's ever really happened before, so there's still a few unknowns. Good. So, what next? A tenseness seemed to creep onto the doctor's shoulders, and with a twitch in his eye, he began to shift his weight from one foot to the other, as if suddenly disassociating and leaving the room entirely. Doc? Oh, yes, he snapped out of his daze. We'll need to run some tests. You're a man